This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, a new invasive and potentially dangerous fish has been found in the coastal waters of Cyprus.
Its dangerousness is due to the toxins contained in the spines of its dorsal and lateral fins, as well as its skin secretions.
Our critically endangered vulture population struggles on. More birds have been released, but 4 of the last release have died, 2 of them because of coming into contact with power lines.
The project has a budget to mark power lines so we can install bird diverters, so we can make the power lines that are high risk for collision visible to birds.
And the British Council is organising a competition. Head to their webpage for the details. You could win big.
So the winners of each category will be offered a prize of £1,000.
The Department of Fisheries has issued an announcement that yet another invasive species of fish has been found in our coastal waters around Cyprus. We've talked on the programme before about the lionfish, and that multiplies so fast it really is becoming a huge problem. Now, apparently, we have the striped eel catfish. I'm not even going to try and pronounce its Latin name, but my next guest probably can. From the Fisheries Department, she is Katerina Georgiou, and she's an expert in non-native species of fish. Katerina, I read that this is quite a dangerous fish. Why is that?
Well, for start, the Latin name is Plotossus lineatus. It's the scientific name of the fish. And its dangerousness is due to the toxins contained in the spines of its dorsal and lateral fins, as well as its skin secretions. So we have to take special care when handling it, especially after fishing it. Its sting is painful and possibly dangerous, and symptoms from the sting could include pain, irritation of the injured area, or even swelling. And in extreme cases, it can cause extreme pain, heart failure, or very, very rarely death. So people with weak immune systems or other medical problems usually show more severe symptoms.
Is it likely to be caught by fishermen? I mean, when we say it's in our coastal waters, is it a bottom feeder? I thought most catfish hung around on the seabed or in the lakes. A lot of them are freshwater catfish, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the catfish that lives in coral reefs as well, so it's special. It is a benthic fish, indeed, so it lives on the bottom from the coast up to 60 meters depth. But anything that lives in the sea, it can be caught in the fishing nets. So if it multiplies and increases in population, then definitely fishers are gonna meet it in the nets.
Have we got other catfish in our seas, or is this the only one at the moment?
This is the only one I know. I'm not aware of any other catfish.
The reason I'm asking is that it basically means then if people are out fishing on the coast and they catch a catfish, even if they don't recognise it as this striped one, they can be pretty sure that it is and be very careful how they handle it.
Yes, you can distinguish it because it has definitely these 2 white stripes, and it has 4 pairs of like mustache, and it has an elongated brown body that looks like eel, so it's quite distinguishable. But in any case, whoever catches something that he doesn't know what it is, for sure she shouldn't consume it or try to handle it in any way, it should first ask.
Okay, but most fishermen don't go out with gloves, do they? If they did have gloves, would that protect them?
Potentially, yes. Some fishermen do have some gloves of hard material, so they don't get stung by any other marine organism or other fishes who have spines. But yes, usually most of them don't use gloves. They're pretty comfortable with their bare hands.
Okay, so they'd have to basically cut the line, wouldn't they, and let the thing go, because it would be very dangerous to try and take the hook out of its mouth if they did catch one. How did it get here?
Well, this fish, it's an Indo-Pacific fish. It can be found from the eastern coast of Africa to Japan and up to Australia. But it managed to enter the Mediterranean by crossing the Red Sea, and it came here through the Suez Canal. So it's a Lesepsian immigrant, as we tell them. And many other species like this one cross the canal and enter the eastern Mediterranean mainly. And from there, it depends if they can spread to the whole basin or go further.
Yeah, and I suppose that would depend on how warm the sea is at the other end of the Mediterranean. So we've got a lot of changes in our ecosystems underwater, haven't we, because of all these fish coming through the Suez Canal?
Yes, the equilibrium is disrupted, and it's the sea is a dynamic environment. It's constantly changing. You cannot really control that. Also, the eastern Mediterranean is definitely warmer than the rest of the Mediterranean Sea. So these species, these warm-like species, are more likely to enter the eastern Mediterranean through the Suez, also due to the climate change and the rise in the water temperatures.
And do you know anything about its breeding habits? I mentioned the lionfish. That breeds so fast, it's become a huge problem, hasn't it? What about this catfish?
Well, as far as we know from the literature, it's spawning in the summer months, and it seems that once it entered the eastern Mediterranean, it didn't spread very quickly to the rest of the country. So it was first found in Israel in 2001, and then it moved slowly north up until the coast of Turkey, where we found it in 2016. So it took for this journey 15 years, and then it crossed over to Cyprus in 2022 for the first time. So gonna say that we don't really know how fast it reproduces once it's established in an area. We'll have to monitor and see.
And what about any other invasive species? We know about these two, but how many others are there?
Well, there are a lot, to be honest. In the Mediterranean, up until today, we have 800 or even up to 1,000 invasive species. So this is likely to increase this rhythm of introduction due to the climate change and the increase in the water temperatures. Not the first one, definitely.
Is it having any effect on our normal fish, should we say, our species that our fishermen usually catch? Are they declining because of all these invaders?
Usually these species, they are called invasive for a reason. They have this capability of spreading successfully. They have very high reproducing rhythms. They usually don't have natural predators, because if you are toxic, then no one wants to eat you. And they really compete for food with the native species. And eventually they take up the space, the food, so there is not much for the native species to have.
Do they predate on our native species?
It can be, yes, it can be. Well, for this catfish, we don't know exactly how it's going to feed in our area, but generally it feeds on mollusks and crustaceans and other small fishes, so it could predate on our small fishes. this remains to be seen.
What are your plans to try and contain it?
We haven't thought of it yet. We haven't discussed of it. We will have to meet and think of how we are going to proceed. But usually in these cases, there are not much you can do because, as I told you before, Rosie, the sea is not controllable. So you cannot. It's not like the land where you can go and just remove something and it's okay. We could go and remove it, but it's going to keep coming. So
okay, so it's really a containment exercise, isn't it? But the lionfish bounty that has been offered has been quite successful, hasn't it? I know a lot of diving groups who go out specifically when lionfish have been spotted in an area to see how many they can kill.
Yes, exactly. So the fishing pressure we can induce on these invasive species is really something we can do. And even better if the species is edible. And lionfish is a really delicious fish.
As long as it's prepared properly. Let's be very careful about that.
Yes, fishermen, they are now experts in removing their spines and giving it ready to the fish market so we can cook it and it's perfectly safe. So this is a good thing with the lionfish. But for this, the catfish... we don't have the technique or the skills to prepare it for food, so it's not edible.
Let's hope too many more don't arrive in the near future, Katerina. Keeps you guys busy, I guess, but many thanks for sharing your knowledge with us, and do keep us informed if there are any other invaders on their way, won't you?
Yes, definitely.
Many thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Thank you.
That is Katerina Georgiou from the Department of Fisheries telling us all about that invasive striped eel catfish which has been spotted in the coast off Cyprus.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Life with Vultures is a European programme that we've spoken about before, and vultures in Cyprus are extremely endangered. We've been working along with Spain and the region of Extremadura to bring vultures to Cyprus to boost our dwindling population. BirdLife Cyprus programme coordinator for the project is Melpo Apostolidou. Melpo, welcome back, and I think last week you released the second batch of vultures. How did that go?
We had some tagging. We tagged because we satellite the Griffon vultures before they are released. So we did that last week, and then we opened the cage to soft release the birds, and we're still waiting for the rest of them to fly.
So the cage is now open. Do they all immediately leave when you open it, or do some of them, they're rather comfy where they are and it takes them a little while to realise they can go?
Yeah, usually they don't go at once. Sometimes it might take a few hours or a few days for that to happen. They're used to being in the cage, and it takes some time for them to realize that there is an escape way, let's say, that the door is open. And we try to encourage them with putting food near the door. And we're waiting for the other birds, the free-flying birds, to fly nearby. And by seeing them, the birds in the cage might go out.
Find their friends. Okay, now I think 15, is that right, were released last year, but sadly only 11 of them have survived. What happened to the others?
Yeah, it usually goes like that with this conservation action. The birds we are bringing and the birds that basically Spain is donating, not only in Cyprus but in other countries as well. They are birds that are very young birds. They are usually collected because they have found to be disoriented or dehydrated. And these are birds that have just flown away from their fledglings. They've just left their nests. And so this means that they're inexperienced birds. So in all birds and almost in all animals, the mortality rates are higher in young birds. So we released 15, very correct. We still have 11. So we've lost 4 birds. One of them was poisoned. We have the toxicological analysis. One of them was drowned, and this is due to inexperience of the birds. It head out to the sea, and on its way back, it was probably exhausted and fell in the water. And one of them was electrocuted, unfortunately, on power lines, on overhead power lines, and the other one collided with overhead power lines. So 2 out of the 4 we lost was due to the power line network of the Electricity Authority of Cyprus.
Well, there's not much you can do about that, is there?
Oh, actually there is, and there are many solutions that countries can implement. And we have been discussing with the Electricity Authority for quite a while now, and there had been some technical issues. We are hoping that soon this collaboration can go on the next level, and the Electricity Authority will support this action, because the project foresees has a budget to mark power lines so we can install bird diverters, so we can make the power lines that are high risk for collision visible to birds. So, yes, we're working towards that direction.
Well, why hasn't that been done since we're in such a dire strait? I think we only have something like 29 birds in total on the island, don't we?
Yes, it is frustrating and disappointing, to be honest. There were some technical issues at the beginning. The markers that were installed had some impact on the lines. And now we have a meeting actually tomorrow with the Electricity Authority, and we are hoping that we will sort this issue out.
What do other countries do?
The same. They use bird diverters on power lines, and they also insulate pylons and poles to prevent birds from being electrocuted. It is something that it has been implemented in Cyprus as well in some areas, but especially and specifically for the Griffon vulture, we have identified, we've done a very elaborative analysis on which lines are high risk for vultures in particular. And yeah, it's a matter of agreeing with the Electricity Authority some practical issues on how we're going to proceed and tender a contractor to install these.
Well, I hope so. Now, you've got another batch scheduled for release, I think, this week. So tell me about those.
Yes, so this week we are tagging the rest of the 7, and again, very soon we're going to open the cage for a soft release. And so hopefully we expect basically that in the next month the birds will fly and they will adjust and they will mix with the free-flying birds. So there will be a transfer of knowledge from those birds to the new released birds on areas where they can go to feed, to sleep, eventually to breed. So, they will show them around.
How old are these birds that have been and are about to be released? Should you be holding on to them for a little bit longer until they become more mature?
Yeah, like I said before, they're juvenile birds, so they're 1-year-old birds, and studies show that they are more appropriate for restocking programs. And we could leave them more in the cage, but there are other issues that we need to take into account. But 7 months is a good amount of time. They've been in the cage for long enough to ensure, good chances of survival. We
should emphasise, I think, Melpa, when you talk about the cage, it's a huge structure, isn't it?
Of course. These are specially designed cages for this purpose. So, for example, the birds have enough space to practice their flight, so they can fly a bit in the cage. There are perching areas, there's water. it's a 20 meters long cage by 6 meters, and it's quite high. So yeah, it's these acclimatization aviaries that are designed based on European standards, of course.
Have you got any evidence that birds that have been released or who were always here in the first place pay a visit to this cage to see what's going on?
The idea is that you have a feeding station near to the aviaries to attract free-flying birds. So they do meet each other, and they very often they sit, the free-flying birds sit on the cage, and they do know each other because they're very social birds. And yeah, we know, and from the cameras and the monitoring we know that they visit the acclimatization aviary very often. So this is the practice conservationists follow.
Now, we were talking right at the beginning about extinction. We're on a timeline here, aren't we? Because how many years does BirdLife think we've got to try and boost the population so that it doesn't go extinct?
It depends how intensive you do your efforts. A study conducted by the Vulture Conservation Foundation, they're a partner to this project, to the Live with Vultures project, shows that if we don't apply any conservation measures, dealing with the threats of mortality and restocking, we're going to lose the population within the next 15 years. So, to be honest, as a country, we were a bit late in implementing targeted and intense conservation actions to tackle the threats that cause mortality to the population.
Do you think we can do it?
Yeah, of course. I believe in the cause. It's a huge challenge. It needs time. It needs money. It needs persistence. We have to keep fighting if we want, the next generations to benefit from the healthy ecosystems in Cyprus, benefit from the ecosystem services vultures provide. But the thing is that, as I said, it takes time, and we're talking about a species that lives many years. To reach a mature breeding age, it takes time. They have to be something between 4 and 6 years old. So this means that they need to survive until they reach their breeding age, and then they lay one egg once a year or every 2 years. So the breeding pace is quite slow, but the poisoning is so widespread, and the frequency of the poisoning incidents, they undermine the conservation efforts.
And of course, I guess that because vultures, if I think I'm right in saying, feed together, don't they? So if there's one carcass that's been poisoned, it could kill several vultures.
Exactly, and they will not only feed from a poisoned carcass, but they might feed on a dead dog, a dead fox that ate a small piece of meat that was a bait. So poisoning creates a huge chain of death that you do not know where it's going to stop. And of course, yes, vultures, because they are social birds, they will feed together, many of them.
I have to wind this up now, Melpo, but we did have, I think, a case where somebody who was convicted of poisoning was severely punished. It's the first time I think it's happened. Have you found that that's made a difference to the attitude in the villages where these poisoners tend to live?
I think time will tell. We didn't have any incidents in the specific village since then. We did try to promote this as much as we could. It is very important to enforce the law. We do education, we do awareness raising, but there are people who they will not change attitude through awareness raising, and we're talking about a wildlife crime which is punishable by law. And it's very important that we had this case that the Game and Fauna Service imposed a €21,000 fine to the person who was doing this illegal activity. He was poisoning eagles, bonelli eagles, and goshawks.
Well,
So,
we can
yeah,
only hope, I guess, that those sort of examples will be taken to heart by people who still use poisoning. And we now have 29. We'll pray that if we talk again next spring, we still have 29, or possibly, if some of the older birds have hatched eggs, we might even have a few more. Let's hope for the best. Melpo Apostolidou, Programme Coordinator at BirdLife Cyprus on the Life with Vultures programme. Many thanks.
thank you, Rosie.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
And we're going to talk now to the British Council because the Study UK Alumni Awards are coming up. And from the British Council, we're joined by Pantelitsa Michail. Pantelitsa, a little bit first, if you will, about these awards. How long have they been going on and what do they entail?
Yes, we are really honored and excited to host those awards for the first time in Cyprus. However, the awards have been running for 10 consecutive years as at the British Council, attracting a large number of people around the globe who have studied in the UK at various levels. And in Cyprus this year, we will be hosting the awards with a national ceremony. However, all applicants will also be eligible for the global awards.
Now, there's still a bit of time for people listening to this, if they did study in the UK, to put in an application, I think. What are you looking for? Because there are several different categories, aren't there?
Exactly. We still have time. The applications will remain open until 22nd, so there is still enough time. Most importantly, we have a very useful tool for people where they can get information on how to better structure their application so that they will be able to submit a strong application demonstrating their achievements. So there will be an online webinar on the 12th of October where people can get online, register themselves and attend, get information, answer any questions they may have about the application, which is a really, really useful tool for them to ensure they are in a position to tick all the boxes that are needed.
And I suppose so that their application stands out.
Exactly, because I'm sure we have a lot of Cypriot alumni who studied in the UK with great achievements that they have came back and offered to our society in the various categories that we ask people to apply for. And if I just mention the 4 categories available, it's Science and Sustainability, Culture and Creativity Award, Social Action Award, and Business and Innovation.
So can you go into a bit more detail about each of those categories and what sort of thing you're looking for from people?
Talking about the Science and Sustainability Award, it could include areas of work around climate action, clean energy, medicine, sustainable cities and communities, engineering, all those sorts of things that people felt they had an impact, where they can link this impact with their studies in the UK and how they have benefited from the qualification and their knowledge and everything they have got from their university in the UK and contributed to their success on achieving those things back in their community. Same applies for the Culture and Creativity Award, where applicants can demonstrate their impact on art, design, media, video, TV, music, YouTube, and humanities. All of those achievements that they have to demonstrate in those areas as a result of their studies in the UK can be demonstrated in their application.
Just before you go on to the other categories, does that mean that if you want to go in for the Art and Culture Award, you must have studied something connected with art and culture? Or does the simple fact that you studied in the UK, even if it was a totally different topic, and then afterwards you contributed to a category, that it doesn't really matter if it wasn't what you studied?
Absolutely. It doesn't really matter what you have actually studied, but what you have managed to achieve. And it doesn't have to be necessarily linked to your exact profession. It could be something outside your work, your employment. It could be contribution, it could be voluntary work or any sort of involvement that one might have had and contributed to that category.
And the other two categories?
And the other two categories, we have social action, which is basically includes areas of work in reducing inequality, poverty and hunger, education and upskilling, peace and justice. And also Business and Innovation Award, which is more straightforward around entrepreneurship, business, technology and finance. But of course, to mention here that applicants are entitled to submit an application just once in one of the areas. However, if the judging panel feels that an applicant has applied for a particular category, but their examples are demonstrating better results on another category, the judging panel will put it forward in another category so that the applicant will not miss out and benefit from being shortlisted and filling a stronger position.
Who are the judges?
As a British Council, we are working globally with the company Griffon, which is an external company. And once all those applications pass through Griffon, then we have as local awards. We will have a local judging panel, which will consist with a number of members from, of course, British Council and the High Commission, and of course, people that stand out from those categories and with vast experience that they can judge those applications in those areas.
So where can people find out more about this, Pandalitsa?
We have the full information available from our website, www.britishcouncil.com.cy. Under Study UK, you will find Alumni Awards. And in there, you can find also all the tips for applying, also the top tips on how to complete your application. And as I've mentioned, also the link to register for our upcoming webinar on the 12th of October. And just to mention, the winners of each category will be offered a prize of £1,000 to be spent into a professional development opportunity of their choice.
That is Pandalitsa Mikhail from the British Council telling us all about the Study UK Alumni Awards, and you need to visit their website to get the details and put in your application. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.